Midway upon the journey of our life, I found myself within a forest dark, for the straightforward path had been lost. And during my journey, as I made my way through the tangled labyrinthine paths of deception, looking for the center of truth, I met a brilliant woman who taught me many a flat fact. But out of all of her flat facts, it was one fact that struck a chord. She showed me the maps of old and asked me to find the key anomaly, the one error that all maps contained. I pointed to the varying representations of unknown land masses, to Hyperborea. She shook her head. No, find the glitch. We live on a flat plane. Our world is an electromagnetic terrarium, surrounded by an ethereal sea of water. And like all terrariums, after initial creation, they begin to form their own self-sustaining atmosphere. The sun and the moon journey above our flat realm in concentric spirals. There are 5 prominent circles of latitude, we are told. We have the Arctic Circle, closest to the center, the Tropic of Cancer at 23.5 degrees latitude in the northern hemisphere, the Equator at 0 degree latitude, the Tropic of Capricorn at 23.5 degrees latitude in the southern hemisphere, and the Antarctic Circle. The sun journeys from the equator at the March equinox up in concentric spirals to the Tropic of Cancer. When the sun is in this position, the northern hemisphere experiences summer and the southern hemisphere experiences winter. After which, the sun turns and begins making its way back to the equator. The word tropic stems from the Latin word tropicus, which means pertaining to a turn. The sun journeys back, taking the same concentric spiral path, and reaches the equator again. It then keeps going and reaches the Tropic of Capricorn. When the sun is in this position, the southern hemisphere experiences summer and the northern hemisphere experiences winter. After a time, the sun turns and begins making its way back to the equator for the March equinox. The equinox occurs when the sun is journeying the circle of the equator, and those living along this line of latitude will see the sun directly overhead at a 90-degree angle at solar noon. The March equinox marks the season of spring in the northern hemisphere, and the September equinox marks the season of autumn. If you live in the southern hemisphere, this is reversed, and the September equinox marks spring and the March equinox autumn. It is important to note that the sun never reaches the Arctic Circle, nor does it reach the Antarctic Circle. It never reaches the poles. It journeys to the tropic circles and then turns back. The point at which the sun reaches its most northerly and southerly excursion relative to the equator is called the solstice. Solstice comes from the Latin word solstitium, which means point at which the sun seems to stand still. And indeed, many do note that the sun seems to stop on the solstices. And this is because, in a sense, it does. It reaches the most northerly and southerly excursion and turns back. But why the Tropic of Cancer and Capricorn? Who names these circles of latitude? Our historical ancestors did. They had clocks that not only told them the seconds of the hour, the hours in the day, but also the moment of dusk and dawn and the current phase of the moon. Their clocks understood the true time, the bigger picture. They understood the celestial clock. The stars above us, beyond our firmament, and in the waters above revolve at a constant 1 degree every 4 minutes from east to west, that is, anti-clockwise. This means they revolve at 15 degrees each hour. 15 degrees multiplied by 24 hours is 360, a full circle. The stars above are fixed. They do not stray from their anti-clockwise journey, but revolve and complete a full circle every day. Our ancient, historical ancestors knew this. They assigned the stars above into fixed constellations. They divided the 360-degree circle of the sky above into 12 divisional arcs of 30 degrees, in which each constellation of the zodiac resides in. They designated each constellation in each 30-degree arc with an anthropomorphic symbol, most of which are animals. Zodiac is an interesting word. Zodiac, the arcs of the zoo. Yes, the parallels with Noah's Ark are strikingly obvious. Each constellation of the zodiac moves from its fixed position in the waters above at 1 degree every 72 years. The stars in the circle above us are fixed in their positions, but every 72 years the entire circle shifts 1 degree. This is what is called the precession of the equinox. Remember, each arc is 30 degrees. If we multiply 72 with 30, we get 2,160 years. It takes 2,160 years for the circle above to shift 1 whole arc. Astronomers call this an age, and this is what is meant by entering or the dawn of a new age. As Wikipedia tells us, the Tropic of Cancer and Capricorn were named such because many years ago, in the days before Christ, the days before BC, the sun was in the constellation of Cancer at the June solstice, and the sun was in the constellation of Capricorn at the December solstice. What does it mean for the sun to be in a given constellation during the solstice? It means the position of the sun in the sky at solar noon. Of course, during solar noon, we would not actually be able to see the stars in the firmament beyond. Therefore, to discern the sun's position relative to the constellations requires either 1, a thorough understanding of the stars and their positions above. Our ancient ancestors, we are told, created star charts and used devices such as astrolabes. Or 2, computer technology that is able to map and overlap the sun's position against the backdrop of the stars and constellations at solar noon. The sun's presence in the constellation of a given zodiac sign means exactly as it sounds. At solar noon, on the day of the solstice, the sun should be in front of a given constellation. Look closer at the zodiac wheel featured on the dial of these clocks. Here we see that both the constellations of Cancer and Capricorn are polar opposites to one another. These are the names of the 2 lines of latitude on the maps, and that we use to discern the sun's most northerly and southerly excursion above our flat plane. All historical cartographic world maps display both these circles of latitude as Cancer and Capricorn. We see it here on Mercator's maps, on the Ortelius, on the Rouge, on the Urbano Monte. Cartographic maps combine so-called science with aesthetics to communicate spatial information effectively. They strive to be accurate. And we still use this designation of Cancer and Capricorn for these circles of latitude on our cartographic maps today. Google Earth also uses these designations. But why? As Wikipedia states, when this line of latitude was named in the last centuries BC, the sun was in the constellation Cancer at the June solstice, the time each year that the sun reaches its zenith at this latitude. Similarly, when the Tropic of Capricorn was named, the sun was in the constellation of Capricorn at the December solstice. And the wheel of the zodiac makes this very easy to understand. For instance, if the sun is in any given constellation at solar noon on the June solstice, then its counterpart on the December solstice will always be in the constellation opposite to the June sign. And this is represented with a straight vertical line. If, for instance, the sun was in the constellation of Aries at the June solstice, then it will appear in the constellation of Libra in the December solstice. If the sun was in the constellation of Pisces at the June solstice, then it would be in the constellation of Virgo during the December solstice. These signs are, in a sense, bound in their opposition to one another. And this is where it becomes interesting. The vertical line here represents the tropic circles and their respective constellations during the solstices, but they are governed by another circle of latitude, the equator. On the wheel, this is represented by the horizontal line, and you'll see that the lines form a cross. The equator and the tropic circles are bound in unison by this cross. Remember, the zodiac is the clock face of the circle of stars above us. When one turns anti-clockwise, the rest follow. And just like the signs of the solstices, the left hand of the horizontal line here represents the constellation the sun is in during the March equinox, and the right hand side representative of the sign during the September equinox. And it is the left hand side of the cross, the March equinox, or what is referred to as the vernal equinox, and its zodiac sign, which acts as a reference point for the entire celestial coordinate system. It's called the first point of Aries. The naming of this reference point after the sign Aries is arbitrary, or so they say. We also use it as a reference point for naming the age we are in. And if we start in the age of Aries, we can illustrate the precession of the equinox and the designation of constellations to their corresponding circles of latitude quite clearly. For instance, if the sun is in the constellation of Aries during the March equinox, then we have the Tropic of Cancer and Capricorn. We also see that the sun will be in the constellation of Libra during the September equinox. Now the stars above us are revolving anti-clockwise from their usual fixed positions at 1 degree every 72 years, and a whole zodiac arc every 2,160 years. So let's jump 2,160 years to the age of Pisces. The sun is, of course, in Pisces during the March equinox. We have the Tropic of Gemini and Sagittarius, and the sun in Virgo during the September equinox. You'll no doubt have noticed that the wheel represented here turns clockwise, and that's because it's a representation of the constellations, as if your view was outside of the firmament and looking down on the stars. If you were standing underneath this wheel and looking up, it would rotate anti-clockwise. I am using the clockwise representation because it is the best way to illustrate the precession of the equinox. This rotation keeps shifting one arc every 2,160 years until the wheel makes a full circle, or what is known as a great year. Why is this important? What we see here, and what the mainstream narrative confirms, is that the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn occurred during the age of Aries. For the last 2,000 years or so, we have been in the age of Pisces. Remember, an age lasts for roughly 2,160 years. And we are now on the cusp of entering into the age of Aquarius. On June 2020, during the solstice, the sun entered the border of Taurus, and therefore the transition has already begun. And Google will tell you this yourself if you search. A new age, or a precession of 30 degrees into a new constellation on the March equinox, is not some new age, pseudo-spiritual fantasy of astrologists and yogis alike. It is an astronomical law of the stars above in the firmament, and you can track it yourself every equinox and solstice. It is a critical and integral component in the function of our realm. If we are entering the age of Aquarius, then that means that the sun has not been in the constellation of Cancer or Capricorn during the solstice for over 2,000 years, when our realm was in the age of Aries. All the old and current cartographic maps, and even Google Earth, represent these circles of latitude as the Tropic of Cancer and Capricorn. There are no maps that present the tropic lines correctly as they should be in the age of Pisces, our current age. Wikipedia and other mainstream narratives of deception tell us that our ancient historical ancestors of horse and cart and copper chisels named these circles of latitude in the times of BC, and no one in the course of history that followed bothered to change the names of the tropics to their accurate designation. We are in the age of Pisces, and have been for over 2,000 years. The circles of latitude should be called the Tropic of Gemini and the Tropic of Sagittarius. And so what? What's in a name? But this brilliant lady, who taught me this flat fact, was patient. What's in a name? Everything. And until she said it, I didn't realize how stupid I'd been to overlook this. Maps are not just pretty projections of the landmass on Earth. They are practical instruments of navigation. Our ancient historical ancestors, we are told, depended on celestial navigation, on the position of the stars in the firmament above to guide their way when at sea. Follow the North Star. And if perchance their compasses failed, then knowing the map of the stars above would be critical. Believing that our ancestors just continued to use the designation of Cancer and Capricorn for the tropics that was established by their own historical ancestors, who belong to a different age entirely, is absurd. Celestial navigation would have been an essential skill set for anyone navigating their way across the oceans. And if they did have advanced technology, like we have our computers and GPS systems, then would they really be that lazy and neglectful to not bother designating the tropic circles to their correct constellation titles? Did they really invest so much time building the most advanced astronomical clocks only to neglect their maps? No, they did not. All these historical maps present designations for the tropic circles of latitude that are well over 2,000 years old. Why? And why are we still using this designation today? For you see, these maps, and all our maps, including Google Earth, are tools of deception. Where are the maps from the age of Pisces? The maps of the last 2,000 years? And could these maps actually be over 2,000 years old? It seems like someone does not want us to know the age we reside in, or wants to distract us from finding out just how important the precession of the equinox really is. This brilliant lady's flat fact leaves us with the following conclusions. The maps, all of them, Mercator and so on, are either 1. Original maps that belong to a period that occurred thousands of years ago and have been given false dates and narratives surrounding their creation. 2. Manipulated copies and versions of original maps that were created over 2,160 years ago. Or 3. They are all fake and created during the Great Reset of the last few hundred years to generate a false history and timeline and solidify the false historical narrative and the rise of Galilean heliocentricity. Out of all of these options, the second and the third are most likely. Cartographic world maps are not easy documents to create and establish. They require a solid understanding of our Earth's size and shape. They require a thorough understanding of the circles of latitude that are integral to the workings of our world. They require a complex understanding of the continents and land masses. These maps are likely manipulated duplications of maps thousands of years old, or completely fake. And we do see signs of manipulation, especially in regard to the landmass known as Hyperborea. We see Hyperborea in various maps of varying styles, and we are told that these are from the 16th century. But towards the 17th century, we see Hyperborea start to be erased from the maps. We see unknown land masses that are present in some of these old maps vanish entirely. And then it dawned on me, the message of this flat fact. We have no trustworthy maps, not a single one. We have no reliable source to show us the bigger picture of the realm we inhabit. I continued my journey, and as I ventured deeper into the forest, the path to the center that led me thus far was gone, and I could not turn back, and there lay no path in front of me. I became truly lost. How to know where you are going if you don't know where you are in the first place, if you don't have a map? All historical waymarks that I had invested some degree of trust in before were now completely unreliable and questionable. How much had been edited by the controllers? How much truth was left? What if all the maps were fake? Why are they hiding the maps of the last 2,000 years? We do not have one single accurate or honest world map. And like in all moments of being lost, right before despair takes hold, an unforeseen circumstance arose that set me back on course. I stumbled through thick overgrowth and out into a moonlit clearing with a small lake. At this clearing I met a mysterious figure named Sturgios. I told him I was lost, and he told me to come and look into the lake. He told me to watch the water. What did I see? He asked. Myself, I replied. My reflection rippling and glistening in the moonlight. Mirror, mirror. Look beyond yourself, he said. What do you see? And there it was, just as it had always been. Mirror, mirror, way up high. Mirror, mirror in the sky. Mirror, mirror, oh how they lie.